Hi folks, it's me Michaela and welcome back to my channel. I'm here today to tell you about all of the books I read in June. And boy was I reading in June. This was by far my biggest month of reading ever, and I am still mystified about how I actually managed to read this much, but as always, I have my iPad here with all of my stats that we'll go through, and then we'll talk about each of the books individually. Benjamin, did you have to do that? So, as always, I have my iPad here with all of my stats that we can talk through before I go into all of the books individually. So, in the month of June, I read 12 books. Again, I don't know how it happened. I usually read 4 or 5. This is almost triple my usual reading. I apparently didn't have a life in June. I don't know what happened. Something. So of these books, I had 3 that were fantasy books, 2 literary books or general fiction, 3 romance books, 2 nonfiction books. That's very outside my norm. 1 science fiction book, also very outside the norm, and 1 mystery book. I had 4 of these books that I physically owned and read, and there were 8 that I read digitally and loaned from the library, and 11 of these books were new to me, but I had 1 that was a reread. Of course, some of my other stats were much larger in June. I read a total of 4,402 pages in June, which averages about 367 pages per book and 147 pages per day in the month. And I had an average rating of 3.7. Even though it was a very huge reading month that I kind of spread my wings a little in terms of genres and books I chose to read, I still had a pretty decently high rating. So that's always pleasantly surprising and lovely when you enjoy the books you choose to read because you thought you'd like to read them. We got a lot to get through, so let's start getting through it, shall we? The first book that I read in June was Quicksilver by Callie Hart, and I ended up giving this a 4-star, and I actually was very surprised by this. I will say it's not original. If you're looking for something that is going to be brand new and it's not going to play off of some characteristics and tropes from some other well-known romantasy series, this is not the book for you. If what you're looking for is originality, if what you're looking for is just a really fun time though, Quicksilver really delivered for me. I found it very bingeable readable. This is a big book. It's 600 plus pages. I was reading it on my iPad, so I don't know how that translates to a physical book, but I think it's still about 600 pages or more. And that's a very large book, but I found that for a romantasy book, it worked really well. The romance and the fantasy plots were very intertwined, which make it more enjoyable for me. Just because as much as ACOTAR, for example, is my beloved trash, it does sometimes feel a little, oh my god, the world is ending, everybody's at war, people are dying. That guy is really hot though. And so because the romance and the fantasy kind of felt they were a very interconnected plot, I found that level of ridiculousness was slightly less present, and I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it. I also the magic system. I thought the Quicksilver elements were very interesting and intriguing, and I do want to continue reading the series, so I'm excited for Brimstone, I believe, which is releasing in the fall. I am thinking about possibly buying this physically, even though I've already read Quicksilver, to buy a copy of Quicksilver. I'm thinking maybe because I did really enjoy it. So the second book I read, total flip from Quicksilver romantasy, was Tales from the Cafe by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is the second book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, and I gave this one a 3.5. I like this series. I like Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I think that the time traveling magic cafe is very interesting. I like that they're novellas. They're short. Each book, at least the first 2 that I've read, have 4 parts. Each part is kind of like an individual short story almost, and they kind of have an overarching plot, like a very little bit to kind of intertwine them together. And I think that's very wonderful. I think they're very like moving stories. I think they're very well written. My one thing with it is that it's starting to get way too repetitive with the rules. Like in the first book, when they were kind of really reiterating these like time travel rules over and over again, I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. You like really want to make sure that like the reader understands that. And of course, like each time somebody's time traveling, it's a new person who's time traveling in each story. So, you know, like the rules need to be explained to them. That makes sense. However, like by the second book, of like every single time it being like so detailed reiterated to you, it's starting to get like just like, okay, yeah, I get it, like I know, you don't need to tell me, like do you think I'm dumb? Like I understand the rules. As much as I understand that the characters who are time traveling need to understand the rules, I just think that at this point in this novella series, when you're on, you know, story 5, 6, 7, 8 of this time traveling cafe, that you don't need it to be shown to the reader so detailed. I feel like it should be just kind of like skipped over a little bit, just because it drags the story out unnecessarily, because it's like, I understand that. I don't need you to tell me again. I just want to get to the part of the story I want to see. So I found that like a little rough. I'm still gonna read the rest of the books in the series. I think these novellas are like really good to pick up in between other bigger reads because they're short, they're really well written, like I said, they're quite emotional, often in like a bittersweet way. So I, you know, like overall I really enjoy them and I will read more of the series. I just don't think this is a series that anyone is going to be like, I finished reading book 1, I'm going to pick book 2 up right away and then I'm going to read book 3 immediately. Like this is a read it in chunks kind of series, you know? Like it's a very long term thing you read in between other books, I feel personally. The next book that I read was the first physical book of the month. That was Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Throne of Glass series, which I am doing a series of reading vlogs for. So there is a lovely reading vlog for my reading experience of Crown of Midnight that I'll link for you. And I did enjoy this one. I gave this one 4.5. I thought by the end we got there. However, like the first half of this book, it's just like everybody's just confused. For like 50% of this book, it's just everybody's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. I don't get it. That's like most of this book. I have heard that apparently now that like things are kind of fully revealed, not like fully revealed, things are beginning to be understood about magic in a way that the story should pick up from here and really kind of get into it. I found the ending of this like really saved the book. If you want to see like more of my thoughts, there's so many of them. What is, oh, I forgot I put that there. You're messing with the whole program. This is where I put all my books. Why would I do this to myself? There we go. I have many thoughts. There were many thoughts. I'm not remembering all of them right now because like I read this so long ago. I read so many books since I read this. But I did have a lot of thoughts in the moment. And they're all present in that video if you want to go check it out. Self-promo, baby. I then read Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman. And I ended up giving this a 4-star rating. I really enjoyed Heartstopper. I find Heartstopper like an interesting series for me to rate because it's not that like I don't enjoy them. I just like don't necessarily feel a strong connection to the story or the characters. And I think it's a combination of it just being a story I personally can't relate to. I am like a straight cis adult woman, so as much as it's like heartwarming to read this like kind of love story of LGBTQ plus teens discovering themselves and like a supportive community around them, as much as like I can really enjoy that and I can really like try to empathize with that and, you know, really feel like that heartwarming story, I don't feel like the connection directly to the characters because it's just like not something I've personally experienced. And adding that to the fact that it's a graphic novel, and I find the like very fast pace storytelling that comes with a graphic novel is just not something I connect to easily as well, because I'm not like spending and dedicating this huge amount of time with the story. You're reading it really fast. Like, even if you're taking your time, a graphic novel doesn't take that long to get through in comparison to reading prose, for me personally. I don't know, maybe you're like a really fast prose reader and you're just zooming. But I find like not having my personal time investment in a book in the same way with the graphic novel kind of disconnects me from the story a little bit. So like graphic novels, as much as like reading Heartstopper has been fun, it's been nice, I really like Nick and Charlie and their story, and I gave volume 2 a 4-star, is like never going to be something for me personally that I'm going to be like wonderfully obsessed with. And like that's fine, like I don't have to be obsessed with Heartstopper, but I don't know, it's just like an interesting discovery for me to realize what makes me feel invested and connected into a story and the storytelling mediums that I prefer. It's just kind of like an interesting thing to think about. I don't know, maybe I'm the only person who does that. I mean, probably not, I assume, but let me know. What do you think? Do you find that you connect with certain mediums of storytelling more than others? Would love to know your thoughts. I then, after reading Heartstopper Volume 2, did my only reread of June. I read a lot of new books in June because I was really trying to focus on reading a lot of my 25 books in 2025 list, TBR. So I was trying to focus on that, but I did do one reread, and that was of Heartless by Elsie Silver, and this was like still a 5-star pun reread. I really love this book. I don't know what it is about it. I don't know if it's like the grumpy single dad cowboy vibes just in general, but I really enjoy this book. I love Cade and Willa. I think they kind of like balance against each other really well. Balance against each other? That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not a sentence that is logical. I guess like the way they like balance each other out and they bounce off of each other kind of with their banter and their tension. I really feel the chemistry between the two, and I really think the story is like quite lovely for both of them and the relationship that develops. So love Heartless. I am like doing a reread of the first 3 Chestnut Springs books before I move into the 4th book, which I haven't read before. So that's why I was rereading Heartless, and I'm soon going to be rereading Powerless, so then I can like finally move ahead in the series, because I paused it to read all of Gold Rush Ranch once I discovered that like all of the characters from Gold Rush Ranch and Chestnut Springs are kind of like intertwined. I'm almost back on track with making progress in Chestnut Springs, but I love the first 3 books so much that I was like, obviously I'm going to take the opportunity to reread them because I love rereading books. 2025 is the year of rereading pour moi. I then, after reading Heartless, read The Wager by David Grann. This is a nonfiction book, really like going outside my usual comfort zone with this one. It's a nonfiction about a shipwreck in the 1740s. I'm not 100% sure why I decided to read this book, because I'm terrified of the ocean, and this is a book about a shipwreck, but I still decided to read it. I ended up giving it a 3. I found that the story had this really wonderful like kind of storytelling narrative. It did not feel like reading a textbook at all, but it was still like very informative and told you about like the experience based off of all of this research that the author did. I just wasn't that into the topic. So I just like never was like, oh my god, amazing, I love it, it's great. So I think I might look into like David Grann and similar nonfiction authors to find these kind of like storytelling narrative nonfiction books, because I did really like the style and the structure of this book. I just was not for the topic. If you're someone who's really interested in ships and sailing and shipwrecks, and specifically in the 18th century, this is the book for you. Go for it. Yeah, just not something I was gonna love, and I don't know why I thought I potentially could. But I'm glad I read it, because now I like know a bit more about what I might be looking for in a nonfiction. I then went outside of my comfort zone even further and read a science fiction book, which was The Martian by Andy Weir. Is it Weir or Where? Like, I've been saying Where, but maybe it's more, is it Weir? Like weird, but like without the D, Weir? Or is it Where? Like a werewolf? Either way, I read The Martian and I gave this a 3.5. This actually was very surprising to me. I actually enjoyed this story quite a lot and I found it very like readable. I really liked that it kind of was more actual, like real world based. I was like terrified the entire time I was reading this book that like an alien was gonna pop out. I don't know why it is. Like, call me prejudiced against aliens, but like if you were telling me about a book and it sounded really good, but then you told me there was an alien in the book, I would be like, I'm not reading the book. I don't know what it is about aliens, but it's just like a turn off for me. It's not even like I've read any alien fiction and it's like, oh, I hated it. It's just something my brain is like, no, I'm not interested in that at all. I don't want to read it. But this surprised me. I will say like my one major issue with the book was that the voice of the main character was kind of something that always bordered on the line of going into cringe for me, and it sometimes went over. So it would be funny and then it would kind of just go a bit too far and then I didn't like it. So like I kind of went back and forth about like, oh, I kind of like this guy, and then being like, ugh. And when that's the POV you're reading from for like the majority of the book and he's the main character and like sometimes you don't like him, it does make it a little difficult. I will say like most of the time I did, but like I said, it's just like every now and then I just was like, no, I can't. So that was like just, you know, one thing that kind of put me off. I am thinking of trying Project Hail Mary and seeing how I enjoy that one, because obviously it's also by Andy Weir, and because of that I assume it has a similar science fiction storytelling where it's like very based in reality and true like space science. And even though it's not like possible presently, it's not like unfathomable to happen, you know. It's kind of like taking science that exists and propelling it a bit further, though I'm also not a scientist, so I don't actually know. But I read it and I enjoyed it enough to think, maybe I'll try more of this. So like I think that's a win for me in science fiction. After reading The Martian, I picked up, hold on, The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This is the third and final book of the Folk of the Air trilogy. So I did finish reading a series in June and I ended up giving this 3 stars. I actually found this kind of disappointing. It felt a little bit like not enough was happening through most of this book to end the series properly, while the book being this short. Like this is the shortest book in the whole series and it's the ending. Why is it so short? And I felt like the pacing of it was like really choppy, because it would go, nothing would be happening, and then suddenly like a bunch of things would happen all at once, and then it would like slow down a lot again. There's also like a lot of this book where the main character Jude was just like unconscious. Like she would just like pass out and then the next scene would be like she woke up. And I'm like, girl, this is happening way too many times in this book. Like I feel like you can only pull that once or twice. And like this, again, it's a 300-page book and it felt like half of the book, like Jude was just out of it, literally. Like just, you know? So I kind of like was disappointed by it. I think like overall it's still good. It's not like how it ended didn't make sense. It was a little out of nowhere. I don't think it was like set up quite well enough that like what happened in this book was something that you could even mildly see coming. Like it felt like not hinted at all in the rest of the series, and it kind of felt like a turn of pace from the way the rest of the series went. I found the first book and the second book were much more like political mind games, and this book kind of just felt a little all over the place. So I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping to, but it's still a good book. And I would say like overall I would give the Folk of the Air trilogy a 4-star, even though like this book personally for me was like a 3. I then read another general fiction literary novel, which was Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors, and I absolutely adored this book. I gave this a 4.5. It was almost a 5-star, but not quite. I found like Coco Mellors' writing reminded me a lot of Sally Rooney, who's an author that I've really enjoyed. So this kind of felt like a very similar writing style. It has that no plot, just vibes, very character and relationship based storytelling, which I found to be like really fascinating, really enjoyable. It felt like something I could not put down. Every single one of the characters in this book is so messed up and is dealing with a lot, and this book feels like you're reading it and you can see the train coming, and you know the train is coming and it's gonna be a train wreck, but you can't stop reading it despite that. I will say, like, the only thing about it that I wasn't a fan of is that there is a couple of places where it suddenly changes POV, and it just felt a little too jagged for me because I don't think it happened enough, and I don't think it happened soon enough in the novel for it to make sense to me. It felt kind of like a little whiplashy out of nowhere. I understand the choice between that. I think changing the POV the way the author does at that moment really isolates that character and shows how different and outside of kind of the rest of the mess this character that you're now reading the POV from is. And I thought, like, it was kind of effective in showing that, but that didn't make it not feel like whiplash when it happened. So I think that was kind of like the main reason I didn't give it a 5-star, because that part just felt like it could have been done better. I felt like it could have worked a tad nicer. I don't know how, but I just wish that it was done a little more fluidly and less kind of like pow, new POV. I really don't want it to be a spoiler, so I'm trying to keep it like very vague how I address it. I feel like if you've read the book, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and hopefully if you haven't read the book, it won't ruin anything for you. Okay, cool. After reading Cleopatra and Frankenstein, I picked up The Maid by Nita Prose, which is the first book in the Molly the Maid series, and I gave this a 3-star. I liked it by the end, but I really struggled, especially with the first third of this book, because our main character, Molly the Maid, although it's not like outright stated, it is, I feel, through her character and her actions and motivations and being inside her POV, I feel like the author is portraying Molly as someone who is on the autism spectrum and or is neurodivergent, and I love seeing neurodivergence in books and the representation for that. However, I don't think at the beginning of this book, at least, that that's done well, because it felt, because it's a cozy mystery book, and usually cozy mysteries have this element of humor in them. They're always a little lighthearted, they're a little fun, and that's why we love them, because they're not constantly high stakes stress. You know, that's why you pick up a cozy mystery. You want the mystery, but you don't want to be freaking out the whole time, right? However, because of this and like the comedy element, especially for the first third of the book, before you start seeing more relationships develop for Molly and you see more character interactions, and instead you're just getting like a lot of backstory from the first person POV, it felt like the book was laughing at Molly and not with Molly, for Molly not understanding social cues and certain interactions with characters. And it was something that made me like very uncomfortable to be reading. As far as I can tell, I don't believe Nita Prose is someone who is neurodivergent, or at least hasn't publicly said anything about being neurodivergent. I could be wrong, and if I am, please let me know. But then believing that from a small Google search, because also I was so not far into the book that I didn't want to search too much in case I like ruined something for myself. But knowing that, and then seeing how Molly was written, and that like her not understanding sarcasm or someone's tone, and it seeming, at least to me, it felt like the book was trying to say like, oh, isn't this funny, because as the reader you can tell she misunderstood it, but Molly is like in the dark about it. It felt like we were laughing at Molly, and I just like was not for it, and I almost DNF'd it, but I decided to give it a chance because I was like, I haven't seen people talking about how this isn't very good representation for neurodivergency, so like maybe I'm just overthinking this, maybe I'm seeing too much about this, because surely other people would have been talking about this if this was the case for the book. And it did improve, and I think it got much nicer by the end of it. And I think now that characters and relationships are like established in the book, that the future books in the series will hopefully not have this issue for me at all. So I will give the second book a chance. I don't think this will be my favorite series, but I'm gonna give the second book a chance and see if it's more improved in that realm for me. But I will say the first third of this book was like very disappointing for me in that way. But I did find the mystery to be a little fun. It was a little predictable, but it wasn't like insanely predictable. After reading The Maid, I did decide to finish another one of the series I was reading, which is The Goal by Elle Kennedy. This is the fourth and final book in her off-campus series. There is technically like the 5th book, The Legacy, which appears to be some kind of like a few years down the road epilogue-y story of all of the couples of where are they now kind of vibe. So this is kind of like the true last book in the series in terms of the like standalone books where each book is about a different couple and they're all interconnected because the characters know each other, kind of typical romance series. And I ended up giving this a 2.5 stars because this was like just so utterly disappointing. And it was so utterly disappointing because I just did not care. Like, I could not possibly have felt more indifferent about this book. The characters were fine. The plot was there. The things happened. The chemistry, non-existent. Honestly, it wasn't like anything was so bad I hated it. Honestly, I kind of wish I did. I feel like I would have had more fun with this book if I hated it, but I just didn't. This is about Sabrina and Tucker, and if you're reading this series in order, once you read the score? Is that the 3rd book? The score. Yeah. So once you read the score, you know plot-wise the major plot thing that's going to happen in this book. And so this book then basically goes back in time and it's kind of happening in tandem with the other books in the series and is showing you like what was happening with Tucker the whole time the rest of the series was happening. But the thing is that you know where it's going. You know what's going to happen. You know the major plot point. And the thing is, with a romance, that is the plot. Like, there's no other surprises to happen. It's a romance book. So what's going to happen is they're going to get together. There's going to be some trope, okay, which was revealed to us in the previous book. They're going to have some kind of conflict and then they're going to get together and be happily ever after because it's a romance. There's not that much surprise you can put into it to make the plot feel a little unpredictable, right? And that's like part of romance that's nice is, you know, there is so much predictability in it. You kind of like know what you're going to get overall with a romance, but then like the details can be fun and exciting and new. But the thing is that you know what's going to happen in this. So then you're reading these characters who have no chemistry. Like I said, like it's so flat. This is a very sad pancake of chemistry. Then you know where it's going. It takes like half of the book for that to finally happen. So then you're like, great, I read half of this book and it felt pointless because we haven't gone anywhere. Okay. Then you finally get to the part that you knew was coming the whole time. And then the plot just totally stalls. Nothing's happening with the plot. Nothing is developing with this relationship. They're just like hanging out, just chilling. And I'm like, what even is going on? Why am I reading pages? Why am I reading words when literally nothing is happening in this book? I do not care. I do not care about this book. And then the characters themselves, again, like they were fine. They were like a little one note because Sabrina is stubborn, hardworking, I'll do it myself, I don't have time for feelings, emotionally closed off girl. And then Tucker is just like my mama raised me right man, who is Southern. They're talking about that all the time. And I just was like waiting for it to be over. Like it wasn't bad enough that I'm like, wow, I'm gonna DNF this book. It just like, it was. I think at least if there was like, if I felt more chemistry between the characters, I could have enjoyed this book. But it's just like the combination of the plot kind of feeling pointless and then the characters just being fine and then the relationship and chemistry feeling flat. I just was like, that happened. That it happened. So I gave it a 2.5 because it was just so utterly average. And like I said, I just felt really indifferent about it. I am done the series though now, and I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do next with Elle Kennedy. I do own the first 2 books from the Campus Diaries series, but I believe the Briar U series happens next. So I'm like, do I want to do that? I also like now, I read The Goal, and I hadn't read Elle Kennedy, I think in like almost a year, close to a year. It was quite a while between reading The Score and reading The Goal for me. And now I'm like, do I just not like Elle Kennedy anymore? Like maybe I've just, you know, in the time between The Score and The Goal, did I just kind of like lose my appetite for Elle Kennedy's writing style and her stories and these hockey romances that happen in college? I don't know. Like maybe, do I even want to read The Briar U? Do I want to keep the Campus Diary books that I have? I'm undecided about it all. I don't know what I'm going to do. I assume that like her writing probably gets better the further on into more series and books she writes, because that would be expected. As you write more books, you're going to get better at writing books. You know, that's just how that works. You know, you're practicing your craft and all that. So I might give Briar You a chance, but I think I'll probably read it digitally. I don't think I'm going to buy any more Elle Kennedy books until I figure out exactly what I'm feeling here. Because right now I'm just feeling very uncertain. But, you know, that's for Michaela in the future to figure out another day. But let's talk about the last book I read in June, which was The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. This is her memoir that came out in 2024. And I kind of decided to pick it up on a whim because I put it on my 25 books in 2025 list. But I just happened to have like a Libby loan come through for it. And I saw that it was actually like pretty short. It was like 250-ish pages, 270 maybe. So I was like, oh, that could just be like nice to read now. And truly, I did not know anything about Kelly Bishop other than that she plays Emily in Gilmore Girls. Like, I really did not know much about her life. And so I found it really fascinating to read. I thought it was a really well done memoir and it was really interesting to me. Like, I can't believe this woman won a Tony and I know her for being the grandma on Gilmore Girls. I'm like, how did I not know any of this? I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done and it was really interesting for me to learn more about her and her life. So enjoyable. I don't rate memoirs, so I don't have a rating for this, but I did really like it. And I think if you're someone who's like watched Gilmore Girls and you're interested in knowing more about Kelly Bishop, for sure, like, give it a whirl, give it a try, give it a read. There we go, guys. Whew, that was like a marathon to get through. But 12 books in June. I don't think I'm gonna read anywhere near that in July, mostly because like I don't think I have it in me to do another reading wrap up this long. Like, I need to calm down or else, like, you know, I'm just not gonna be able to film this much. But if you like the video, make sure to give it a like, give it a little thumbs up. If you haven't liked me, consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. Do let me know down below, how many books did you read in June? Have you been reading way more than you thought? Have you been reading way less? What kind of motivates you to read more? Is it just having more time on your hands? Is it the nice weather? All of those things, let me know. Let me know if you read any of the books I read this month and your thoughts on them, or tell me what your favorite or least favorite book that you read in June was. And with that, I hope you're having a wonderful day today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!